Welcome to Standard Intelligence, your resource for competitive constructed magic in the UK. This is episode 62 for the week beginning the 21st of January 2019. I'm Dr. Jack Patton.
And I'm Simeon Beaver. This episode is brought to you in part thanks to our supporters on our Patreon. Many thanks to those of you who have made a contribution. It is immensely appreciated by both of us. Anyone who's our supporter on Patreon by the 5th of February will be eligible for our February draw. If you'd like to be in it or would like to learn more about how to support us, please head over to patreon.com/SIcast. With that, let's get right into the news for this week.
So this week, apart from obviously having had our pre-releases at the weekend, we have also had a banned and restricted update. And despite, I feel that both me and you, Simeon, were both on the train of probably no changes in any format. Would you agree with that?
I was up until the last Modern GP.
Yeah, I can see that. So, for those of you who haven't heard, KCI, Croc Clan Ironworks, is banned. The card itself is banned, making, obviously, the deck rather unviable in tournament play.
At least not being called that anyway.
Oh no, there was Podless Pod for a little while. People will still use old names, but there's nothing to do in the deck anymore, so I don't feel like you can actually play it. So Wizards stated a high conversion rate of the deck from the number of people playing it to a top 8 berth. There was a lot of arcane, their word, rules interactions that players had to know to understand how the game state was progressing, and long turns where the opponent, the KCI player, basically sat there doing nothing while the KCI player comboed off, but because it wasn't necessarily deterministic, and or, rightly so, the opponent had said, I don't understand how you're going to beat me, please play it out. The deck has been considered a tournament nuisance and banned. The other cards considered for this banning were actually Mox Opal and Ancient Stirrings, both cards that a lot of modern players have pointed to and said, these cards are a little bit busted. Wizards have basically stated that they are still considering them, they are not off of the watch list, but they decided to not knock them out this time due to their knock-on effects on other decks, and that their deck building restrictions make them less egregious than other cards might. So the fact that they are staying in the format at the moment is probably a sigh of relief to players like Simeon, who plays a Stirrings deck.
I have said in the past that Nissa's, it's not Nissa's Vow, whatever the Nissa.
Oath of Nissa?
Nissa's Oath. The Oath of Nissa is a perfectly good replacement. Obviously, it's not as good, but it would replace Ancient Stirring straight away in Tron.
Fair enough.
And it would still be viable.
I don't doubt that Tron would continue to be viable even without Ancient Stirrings, because the number of times that I've seen people go, Multiforce still hit Khan on turn 3 is devastating. Yeah, so that's it for Modern. Standard, no changes. In fact, the only other format mentioned was Pauper, with both Gush and Foil are basically being put on notice if these cards continue to be far too large a part of the metagame in the Pauper online leagues and in paper from now on. They could be seeing a ban at some point in the future, basically because they have really high power, almost no deck building restrictions, and they are free to cast. The only thing you need to be playing in your deck to cast these basically consistently is islands, and they are ridiculously good. The next announcement for BNR will be on the 11th of March.
So pay attention to that for Magic Fest London.
Yes, absolutely. That'll be, a month before MF London?
Yeah, it will be.
So, yeah, that'll be interesting. Obviously, we are between seasons at the moment, so there's no PPTQ results. So, Simeon, I say we dive straight into our top 10s.
Yay! As always, Jack and I have put together our top 10s independently, so we had no idea what each other was going to come up with. And this time we haven't hit very many of the same cards, so we've got quite a lot of cards to talk about. But one thing I did want to say is that we've seen a lot of standard already for this point in the season. Because of that streamer event, I feel I've seen lots and lots and lots of different decks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not picking out things that have no hope of ever doing anything. And my top 10 list changed dramatically over the course of the last 7 days.
Yep, I'll agree with that. There was a lot of really innovative things going on at that streamer event that I absolutely loved seeing. The other thing that I wanted to call out was Wyatt Darby actually did a 24-hour stream the other day with a ton of different standard decks. So that was really amazing to see. Do go check him out over on the Twitters and the Twitches and the things like that, because there were a lot of really interesting archetypes on display. An Esper mid-range deck that used the CCDD spell in Black-White in Orzhov, that I was just like, whoa, where did this come from? And basically it was like, you recognise that this is almost, not quite, but almost a Tarmogoyf. Not a Tarmogoyf, Siege Rhino. It's like, almost. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's like, actually, it's better in mid-range fights than a Siege Rhino, because your opponent discards, and that's way more important than dealing 3 damage. It's just that...
Until they're empty-handed, and then you'd rather deal 3 damage.
I mean, yeah, but a mid-range game where you're still playing spells and your opponent's empty-handed is really good for you.
True.
So, yeah, the Basilica Bellhaunt was the name of the card I was thinking of.
Though, of course, that's not on either of our top 10 lists, so somehow we've managed to talk about an extra card there, Jack. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
So, shall we get to my number 10?
Yes, we should. We really should.
My number 10 is Gatebreaker Ram. It's 2 and a green for a 2/2 at uncommon. So, an odd thing to make my top 10 list, I guess. Gatebreaker Ram gets +1/+1 for each gate you control. And as long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has Vigilance and Trample. The reason this is in here is because I have seen the Gates deck on Arena, and it is bonkers.
Yeah, there was a
when it goes
Saffron
off.
Olive tweet earlier that basically said the Gates deck is real.
It is. I've played against it a couple of times. I faced a 7/7 Gatebreaker Ram, which has Vigilance and Trample. And And of course, with the Colossus thing that comes back off the top if they want that, and the red spell that deals damage for how many gates you've got to each of your creatures. And that it was like, there are 2 Gatebreaker Rams and 1 gates damage spell. Oh, I guess I'm dead then.
Yep.
I don't have anything bigger than 7/7s. So nothing survived.
Yeah.
So it's probably never going to be a tier 1 deck, but it's certainly a deck that A, is not that expensive to build.
I was going to say, budget in both paper and on Arena, worth considering.
And B, quite fun.
Yeah.
And C, attacking from angles that people aren't really expecting. I get with this plus the burn spell, which I really should find the name of.
Yes, I should find the name of that as well.
Gates Ablaze.
Yeah.
It is Gates Ablaze, yes. Doing X to everything for 3. It popped in. It was a very last minute addition to my top 10, but I think felt it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my 10 has currently seen no play, as far as I know, or at least very little of it. I just keep looking at it and going, how is this not in a deck? I don't understand yet. And that is Unbreakable Formation. So for those of you who haven't seen this is 2 and a white instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Protection against most wraths, and obviously also quite useful for winning in combat, etc, etc. But it also has addendum. If you cast this spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature, and those creatures each gain vigilance until end of turn. So basically you get a completely free attack because your creatures don't bother tapping and they're all indestructible.
It's also a bit of a split card,
yes,
essentially.
Yeah.
In disguise.
Yeah. It's counter your wrath or mush for more damage.
Yeah, or put a counter on everything.
Yes, and obviously there are plenty of counter synergies in this set, especially when mixed in with other sets. I think I saw this in a Bant counters deck, and got to Herdana's Climb and use Unbreakable Formation and use one of the cards that I'm going to be talking about later to generate more value off of it. And it's just like, wow, okay, that was a really big attack out of nowhere that came in for free. Like, your opponent couldn't kill any of your creatures. So in also of note, it doesn't say anything about non-token. So in a go wide white deck, this is going to look really good. But I think even as a way of dealing with wraths, while also giving you, as you say, a split effect of being able to make your creatures bigger.
Yeah, it's not a dead card against anyone, because against another aggro deck, when you're racing, suddenly you've given everything +1/+1 and vigilance.
Yep.
And against a control deck, you've used it as the instant to give your creatures indestructible. Yeah, it does seem strong. I agree. Probably just needs to find its right home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the right home existed last season, and that's why we haven't seen it played much, because people are playing with the new toys.
Yeah, fair.
So, yeah.
So my number 9 is another card that has these two modes with it. My number 9 is Ravager Worm. There
we go.
3 red, green for a creature worm, a 4/5 with Riot. So that means that when you play it, you can either give it a counter or give it haste. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose up to 1. It either fights a target creature you don't control, or destroy target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability, also known as Canter.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong there, yeah.
Or Arch of Arazka, or
Arch of Arazka, or a Aklataz, Temple of the Fallen, the Flip to Danto, Flip to Danto's Bloodfast, and a Flip to Danto, the first fort, yes.
They're all coming into play, aren't they? All of those lands are a thing.
Yeah, like Herdana's Climb is going to see more play this season, and
so flips Herdana's Climb.
Yeah,
it has lots of uses there.
Even if you want to just blow up a Memorial to Folly, it's not terrible. Yeah. Oh, your opponent's managed to get out a Carnage Tyrant. Well, okay, I'm going to blow up the Memorial to Folly, and then this thing is nearly big enough to block it if I give it +1/+1 counter. I only need one more creature.
That is its problem, is that it's at biggest it's a 5/6.
Well,
and there is Carnage Tyrant in the format.
Unless you've got something else to give it more riots.
Well, true. It's mostly in my list as an example, as your last one was, Jack, of cards that have these dual modes, which mean that in best of 1 play, they're a good thing to look to put in your deck, because they will deal with multiple different decks.
Yep, absolutely.
So if when the Gruul deck gets put together properly, on best of 1, I will be playing Ravager Worms.
Fair enough. So my number 9 is, again, it's a dual mode card. And I'll be honest with you, it's here because of another card on my list more than anything else, and we will get to that much later. But the fact that it has purpose now is important to me, and this is Mortify. This is 1 white/black for an instant destroy target creature or enchantment. And as I say, the fact that you can obviously pick off things like Azcanters in control decks, so that it isn't completely a search for Azcanter rather than an Azcanter the Sunken Ruin.
Yes.
Against a control deck, meaning that it's not entirely dead there. And then obviously against most other decks there will be creatures to blow away and that kind of thing. It means that it's got a little bit of value over a card like Murder, which I do believe we have Murder in the format at the moment, don't we?
We do have Murder in the format, M19.
Yeah, and it has seen no play, which is, a little bit surprising considering the last time it was in Standard, it saw 1 to 2 copies on a semi-regular basis in one of the 2 basically best decks in Standard. What's it called? What was the mechanic called? Delirium decks. Delirium decks would play 1 or 2 copies of them occasionally. Just when the metagame required it. And the fact that Mortify is a different colour might not actually be too bad in this new Standard, considering it might actually make it more castable than black-black. 1 black-white is basically more castable at the moment than 1 black-black.
Double black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I say, it's down in the lower end of my top 10, but I think it's something that we're all going to have to be very, very aware of when building basically every deck that we build, and from both sides of this. You know, if you're playing Orzhov colours in your 2 or 3 colour deck, you're going to have to remember that this is an option for you. And if you're not, you're going to have to remember that any creatures, any enchantments that you put in your deck are likely to meet an end at the hands of Mortify that was put in there just so that it could knock out important creatures.
Equally, we are going to need to have enchantment removal.
Yep.
If we can.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of enchantments.
There really are. I mean, like I say, we've mentioned plenty already. Hadana, Adanto, Argyles are just the ones that spring to mind as being really good value while they stay on the battlefield and you really want to kill them.
And I'm about to mention another one.
Indeed.
So as my number 8 is Theatre of Horrors, 1 black, red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. And during your turn, if an opponent lost life, so if you have Spectacle enabled, you may play cards exiled with Theatre of Horrors. And then 3 in a red, Theatre of Horrors deals 1 damage to a target opponent or planeswalker. So it enables itself.
Yep.
It gives the red-black deck card advantage. Mm-hmm. And allows you to just keep playing your burn spells.
Yep.
I feel this is a really, really good addition to the Punisher deck that we were seeing bits of last season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking forward to playing it.
I think there's a couple of important notes that I want to make about this one, and that is, one, that the Theatre of Horrors is, it's a little bit of reach, it's a mana sink, and sometimes in the long games, the red decks last season just went, okay, I've got this risk factor, like, go, and point it at you, and the opponent goes, you're going to be empty-handed? Yeah, cool, take it, go down to 6, like, that's fine, carry on. Whereas this being like ping you, there's a clock.
Yeah, it's not just the fact it's a clock, it's I risk factor you. If you take the damage, these cards under my Theatre of Horrors are now active.
Yes. And the other thing to note is it's not only the card exiled this turn. It is all cards exiled under Theatre of Horrors.
Under that particular
copy of Theatre of Horrors, yes. That's something that I think I misread the first time, and I think a not insignificant number of people will misread as well, because the way red spells like this have worked before is you've only got that turn to play it.
You have that turn, or sometimes until your next turn.
Yes.
As there is in this set, indeed, there is a until your next turn you may play these cards.
We're about to talk about that one, in fact. But yeah, so I think Theatre of Horrors is an excellent card draw spell for the red-black decks.
So yeah, let's go to the other card.
So the other card that does a similar sort of job, though much shorter duration, is Light Up the Stage. Now, for those of you who have not seen this is 2 and a red for a sorcery, but you can Spectacle for a single red, so if you've dealt damage for a single red. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So you can play those cards this turn, and you can play them on your next turn. And in fact, if they're instants, you can play them on your opponent's turn in the middle. This was absolutely insane for me at the pre-release. I'm not entirely convinced it would have made my top 10 if we'd been doing this before the pre-release.
The pre-release.
The pre-release, rather. Not the pre-release.
We didnn't get the pre-release,
no, exactly.
sadly.
And it didn't. I don't think I saw it at the pre-release either. But I think this card looks just absolutely amazing. People have started testing it in Modern. It's... people have been calling it mini ancestral, which...
Yeah, that seems a little much for it.
Except, single red basically draw 2 cards.
Calling the next decent Premier League striker the next Cristiano Ronaldo is not quite.
I'll take your word for that. But yes, I think this is going to be a really powerful card, something that needs to be considered for basically any deck that can cast it. Is your deck doing a thing where you're going to be able to turn on Spectacle a reasonable amount? And are you okay with only drawing 2 cards but drawing them basically right now? Things like Experimental Frenzy can be bonkers in the long game, but they do cost 4 mana, and the turn that you cast them, you often aren't casting anything else. Another good hit for Mortify, I should point out.
Yes, it is another good hit for Mortify.
Mm-hmm. Simeon, do you want to talk about your number 7?
Yeah, my number number 7 is a card that was much higher up on my list earlier this week. It is Incubation Druid. 1 and a green for an elf druid. It is an 0/2 and it taps to add 1 mana of any type of... I'll try that again. Yeah. Tap to add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce, but if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type, and it has Adapt 3 for 3 green. This is really, really bonkers if you have a way of getting a counter on it without paying that 5 mana.
Yes. As soon as you have to pay the 5 mana, it's very medium, right?
I mean, to be fair, it does pay for 1 of the mana itself.
Yeah.
It's also a great card, though, for where you have double colours, because once you've got 1 land that produces a colour, you can then make your second one with the Incubation Druid.
Yeah, the trick that I saw, and I think I mentioned previously, was Unclaimed Territory, which can obviously make mana of any colour. And
so, therefore, she can make mana of any colour.
Yep.
If you have turn 2 this, turn 3...
Hadana's
Climb.
Well,
put the counter on this.
Turn 3, Hadana's Climb, Ajani. There's a few ways of getting +1/+1 counters on a creature on turn on 4 mana.
Yeah, it was more the Hadana's Climb is the 3 mana that she makes. So your Hadana's Climb is free.
Yeah, I can see.
Hadana's Climb, put the counter on, and then you've still got 3 mana to spend.
Yeah, 3 mana of 1 colour. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that did get me in a game I played. I wanted 1 green-blue, and I yes, Incubation Druid. Oh no, that doesn't work, and I've tapped everything else.
Yep.
Oops. So yeah, do bear that in mind. It is only of 1 colour, but I think she's going to be strong. She's definitely better than the 1/3 mana dork that's currently in standard.
Druid of the Cow.
That's the one. And she'll replace that. She won't replace Elvish Mystic. Llanowar Elves.
Basically Elvish Mystic.
But she'll definitely be there in ramp decks and in any green decks wanting to make lots of mana.
Fair enough.
And your next one, Jack?
So my next one is a little bit of an odd one. I just think that it's quite a strong effect, and it might lead us to something like a more controlling version of the Drake's deck, and this is Terramander, a card that was spoiled only as Salamander Drake, which is funny because it's creature Salamander Drake. It's a 1/1 with flying for a single blue, and then it has Adapt 4, i.e. make it a 5/5, for 7 and a blue, but that gets cheaper for every instant and sorcery in your graveyard. And so what I'm thinking is this turns into something like a Delver of Secrets sort of style plan, where you go this on turn 1, and now the rest of the game is entirely about controlling what your opponent is doing. We haven't seen a really hard version of that aggro control thing that we've had in other formats before in this current standard, apart from, as I say, in the I would say probably the Phoenix version of the deck embodied it more, this sort of I'm going to control out the game, and in doing so, I'm actually going to put a clock on you relatively quickly with really cheap threats that just happen to, either grow over time or have a way of getting larger at a point where it's advantageous to me.
But where you can adapt it for 1 blue,
yeah,
and in the same turn play an Enigma Drake or a Crackling Drake that's also huge.
Yep.
So, okay, deal with these this turn or you're dead.
Yep.
And then, if you have the thing that allows you to adapt it again, that's just horrific.
Oh, that would be really funny. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, that would be quite amusing. Blue, and I'll put 4 counters on this. Tap this thing. And blue, I'll put 4 more counters on it. It's a 9/9. Slam you.
Yeah. You be dead.
You're going to die now. So, yeah.
It has looked... Yeah, it's only a tiny 1/1 flyer. Yeah, not for long when the Drake deck's playing loads of spells, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. It plays into the sort of game plan that I quite enjoy. I love playing Delver in Pauper and that sort of thing. So it's something that I definitely want to keep an eye on, and I think it's going to see some play, at least in the early sets of list. Whether it continues to hold out as being better than a Drake, don't know yet, but
so you think it's replacing Drakes?
I think it might.
Additional.
I
Drakes.
think it might replace Enigma Drake, because Crackling Drake obviously draws a card as it enters, so it's still got some value.
I thought it might replace Opt.
No, I think Opt is too much what the deck is doing, sort of thing. I don't think you're going to go into that heavy of a creature base. Now you're playing this weird sort of 12 creature deck that also just really wants to put spells in its graveyard card at all times. I mean, that's an entirely reasonable thing. We've seen versions of Drake's decks that play like 7 Drakes and then 4 Goblins, like 4 Goblin Electromancers. So this might just go in where the Goblin Electromancers used to be.
Yeah, definitely looks better than the Goblin Electromancer.
Yeah. Certainly if you build your deck with a bunch of 1-cost interaction as opposed to 2-cost spells. But yeah.
So on to my number 6.
Indeed.
My number 6 is Growth Spiral. Green and blue. For an instant, draw a card. Yay! You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. I mean, a fairly straightforward card here, but very, very powerful. Turn 2, get your 3rd land out of your hand. Later on in the game, if you draw it, it's a cantrip.
Yep.
For 2 mana. So not bad. Top deck at any point, really. I love it. I think it's great. If Simic becomes strong, it will be in every Simic deck going.
I can see this in Teamer decks as well, like ramping up to big monsters and that kind of thing.
Or ramping up to big Nexus of Fates.
I mean, yeah, that's also a fear. But yeah, no, I totally agree.
I've seen it being done.
So have I. Yep. I totally agree. I think Growth Spiral is an excellent Magic card. Really interesting to see it in Standard because I think it provokes specific decks to be played with it in, i.e. higher land counts that can do more with those lands, and specifically ones that want to be able to interact at instant speed. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting include here. My 6th card also has growth in its name, but it is Growth Chamber Guardian. So this is the 2/2 Elf Crab Warrior for 1 and a green, with Adapt 2 for 2 and a green, and says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Growth Chamber Guardian, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So this is sort of Squadron Hawk, sort of not. Obviously, there's some downsides. If you never get to put a +1/+1 counter on it, it never goes and gets the other copies of itself, which is bad. That being said, I think it's going to find a lot of homes in mid-rangey decks, maybe not even ones that have that much in the way of counter synergy, just because it provides basically a massive mana sink. It just says, pay 5 mana, get a 4/4 that draws you a 5 mana 4/4 that draws you a 5 mana 4/4.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I'm looking. I'm looking at the mid to late game where you get to go, well, I've drawn 1 Growth Chamber Guardian and I've accidentally drawn 4 cards with it. You know, that kind of level where it's not on its own a massive impact to the board, but in the team of 4 could very much swing a game towards your advantage.
It could, until your opponent plays the thing that exiles everything with the same name.
Unmoored Ego?
No, the detention sphere on a stick.
Oh, yeah, that would be funny. That would be really funny to see.
I'll take all your Growth Chamber Guardians, thank you very much. And they lose all their counters.
I want to say Warden of Detention, but I could be wrong.
You could be right there. No, it is not Warden of Detention.
Let me look it up, because now I'm curious and I want to know what the name of that card is.
Deputy of Detention.
Deputy of Detention, there we go. Yeah, I knew it was of detention, because as you say, it's a detention sphere effect. So yeah, that would be pretty bad. I'm not seeing Deputy of Detention seeing a lot of play, in my opinion, but
no, I think it needs a particular meta for him to see play, where he's going to be good against lots of different decks. If there are lots of decks that have like one threat that they keep getting multiples out of, maybe.
Yeah,
and they don't have removal, which is the other problem. It's probably maybe a bit like Hostage Taker, comes out occasionally.
Yep. Yeah. You still see it sometimes.
It's interesting, I think, that you've got that at 6 and I've got Growth Spiral, and then at 8 we've got Theatre of Horrors and Light Up the Stage.
Yeah.
They're not the same cards, but they're in similar types of deck.
Yeah, I think so too, actually. I could definitely see like a mid-rangey ramp deck playing both Growth Spiral and Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yeah. Or a Simic counters deck play both as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And then at 5, I have a split card. I have Warrant Warden. So Warrant is Azorius for an instant, put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. And Warden is 3 white blue. Create a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx creature token with flying and vigilance. And we will make the obvious joke that should therefore be green-black.
Yes.
I have this in partly because I had to have a split card in, because I think all of the split cards look good.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
And if I was going, I want cards that might be playable in Standard, I'd need all 10. Also, I've seen this do some work. The putting the attacking creature on top of its owner's library is harsh.
Yeah, because you're cutting off a draw step for your opponent as well.
Yeah, so you're getting card advantage with this.
My opponent's stuck on land, and they've played 1 land, Lanner Elf. They've not got a thing to do on 2. They're attacking with it. Well, that can go back on top of your library then.
Yeah, and now you've
still
not got a land.
And now there's not another land drop for another turn. Yeah. That could be gross. But as you say, it's not dead against other sorts of decks because it's got this second half.
Yeah, where you can go, I'll make a 5 mana 4/4 flying vigilant creature.
Yeah, very similar in my estimation to Thrash Fret. Mm-hmm. This removal spell on the front end later in the game, if it's not against a deck where you're going to need a removal spell, you just threat.
Yeah, or I need a threat out and I haven't got one. Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's one that's named that.
Here's one that does exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah, I looked at the split cards as well. I will say that Consecrate Consume very nearly made it into my list, because I think that is an excellent Magic card as well, and it should be in a lot of sideboards, at least, if not, a main deckable card. These split cards get to be main decked because of their flexibility.
Yeah, Carnival Carnage looks great in a Rakdos deck.
Yeah.
Way of enabling Spectacle, and there are lots of 1 toughness creatures around.
Yeah, you get rid of a nice, an early Lanner Elf, you get rid of the 1/1 for 2 in red that can become a 4/4 when it puts counters on itself when red spells get played. Steamkin, Runaway Steamkin.
Yes, Runaway Steamkin.
If you can ping that off while they've got like a counter trigger on the stack or something, that's pretty tasty.
I've been playing Incubation Incongruity in my Simic deck.
Yep, yeah.
And it's done work there. All of them really, really, really strong. Bedazzle was in my original top 10 list.
Really? That's surprising to me. I don't think it's actually that powerful. I think that's probably the lowest power of all of them.
I think it's, again, the target non-basic land thing, which Rakdos has got very little ways of dealing with.
Yeah, I think 6 mana is a bit much to ask, though.
Well, fair, but if it's needed, it's needed.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But as you say, so we could have put lots of these in.
Yeah.
Only one actually managed to make it into either of our lists.
I think that's a reflection on this set being kind of nuts.
There are lots of powerful cards. Lots and lots of powerful cards. Quite ridiculous amount.
Yes.
Not that that's a bad thing.
No. So
your number 5,
number 5 is actually one that you've got higher in your list. So do you mind if I skip down to my number 4?
Let's go to your number 4, yeah.
Okay then. So my number 4 is Hero of Precinct 1. So I would not have said this before the streamer event. Actually, I might have said it after the pre-release. Once the streamer event came round, I basically went, okay, that's a really powerful card, and I should definitely be trying it. And then I played with it and realised it was nuts. So Hero Precinct 1 is 1 and a white for a 2/2 human warrior. Whenever you cast a multicoloured spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So it just pumps out other creatures. And obviously it comes with some deck construction restrictions, right? You need to be playing a fair number of multicoloured spells. Basically, everything above this on the curve should be multicoloured if possible.
Most things should be, because obviously the hero is still a 2/2 for 2. It's not like it's a 1/1 for 4.
No.
Where you have to build your deck around it.
And I have definitely used it as just, well, this is a 2/2 that's getting sacrificed for some
getting
value.
Sacrificed or blocking or whatever it's doing. But yeah, it's an army in a can card.
Exactly.
It very, very nearly made my list.
That's why I've put it in my list. It's an army in a can. That's exactly it, Simeon. And those sorts of cards always end up seeing a certain amount of play in Standard, and sometimes they see a lot of play. Obviously, Gideon Ally of Zendikar springs to mind, even though he was a little bit busted, in that he could just go into any white deck, basically. So
Elspeth was the...
Elspeth, the same. Now, obviously, these are Planeswalkers. They come with no deck construction restrictions like Hero, but Hero also only costs 2 mana and still turns sideways to attack.
What was the heroic?
Gideon does as well.
There was a heroic card that pumped out soldiers.
Oh, yeah. I think there was one in red and there was one in white. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I did not play
they also saw some play. Monastery Mentor.
Oh, Monastery Mentor saw so much play, yeah.
And this could be the new Monastery Mentor. It really could.
Yep, no, you're absolutely
It's
right.
not quite that strong, but still.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's the level of card we're sort of looking at and then going, well, this one has a similar look to it, so we better keep an eye on it. But yeah, like I say, it's been doing really well for me in leagues at the moment, so worth considering.
Listen. So on to my number 4. My number 4 is the Wrath from the set. It's Kaya's Wrath, and it's white, black for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. A 4-mana Wrath spell. How is it not in your top 10, Jack?
I totally agree with you. It's definitely a card that needs to be considered because it's going to see a lot of play. That being said, it comes with some restrictions. That being, if you're playing it in a control deck, you're splashing blue for basically Teferi.
Yes. If you're playing an Esper control deck, I wish that it didn't have to be an Esper control deck. I wish it was a black-white control deck because I'd possibly quite like to play that, but I do not want to play with
I'd be interested in playing
Teferi.
a black-white Wrath the board, kill all the creatures, control deck, and then here I'm going to slam my Planeswalker. Oh wait, we don't have a decent Planeswalker in black-white at the moment.
We don't currently have a decent Planeswalker in black-white. That is its
I should qualify
there.
that more accurately. We don't have a decent Planeswalker in black-white for a control deck. I still think cards like Ajani is perfectly reasonable in a white creature-based deck, and I still think that Kaya will possibly see some sideboard play, but she's not a way of winning the game by herself, in my opinion.
She's not an Obnixilus or a Sorin.
Oh, Sorin. To have Sorin back. Sorin 6 or Sorin 4, I'd take either.
And unfortunately, he's sort of stuck in some concrete.
Yeah, he's still in the mana on Ixalan, on Innistrad, yeah. And Obnix is off plotting to be mean to people again. So,
well, the big bad mean thing that's mean to people is bossing the world. He's disappearing, is he?
Yeah.
Trying not to get noticed.
Obnixilus is nothing to me if not a punk who will come out and go, "Oh, you're in the middle of a really important fight. I'm just going to sort of like nudge you." And that's going to make you feel awful. But I didn't really actually beat you. I just took advantage of you being in the middle of something else. Oh, there's something stronger on this plane than me. Well, I guess I'm off then.
I guess I leave.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, Obnixilus the punk.
So Kaya's Wrath at the moment maybe isn't going to see play a huge amount. But over the course of its life in the format, I believe it will.
Do you see it going into decks that have their own creatures? Creatures that have, say, afterlife and that sort of thing?
Even if they don't, you can play it in a deck. If you can rebuild, so
say Adanto, the first 4, or
the white tokens deck from a few seasons ago.
Yeah.
I would wipe that board with, what was the thing that gained life for every creature?
Fumigate.
I fumigated that board a number of times.
Yeah.
So, I can rebuild. You can't.
Yeah. You've been forced to play onto this battlefield because I keep making a bunch of tokens. Your hands
in that
empty.
sort of a deck, it becomes a sideboard card.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I can see it being played in decks that play their own creatures.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think this is. I do agree. It's a very powerful card. It would have made my top 10. But I kind of enjoy talking about more cards than just 10, so I cheated slightly and assumed that you'd put it there.
I think we do that as well, don't we? We have, now we've done this for a few sets. We've gone, because to be fair, your number 2 card would probably have been on my list had it not been for the fact that...
You knew I was putting it on this list.
I knew you were putting it on there, so I left it off. So yeah, we have partly got that. I guess both our top 5s become a top 10.
Yeah.
And our bottom 5s are both our
almost honourable mention sort of level cards. Yeah. Speaking of, here's a card that actually existed on both of our lists. Simeon. can I interest you in an excellent ramp target?
You most certainly can interest me in an excellent ramp target.
I thought that might be the case. Man who was casting Ataka when I first met him. This is Hydroid Krasis. This is X green blue for a 0/0 jellyfish Hydra beast with flying and trample, and it also enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. Fairly standard Hydra-y stuff. And it also says, when you cast this spell, you gain half of X life and draw half of X cards, rounded down each time. And I want to make it very clear that is a cast trigger.
Oh,
This is extremely important for this card because it means when you go, I am going to cast this Hydroid Krasis against a control deck, X is hopefully something along the lines of 6 or 8, you still draw the cards. Your opponents still they can counter the spell. The Krasis doesn't come down. That trigger resolves. You are still drawing those cards. And that is really important to me. The fact
it's massive for the card. It is absolutely massive.
I think this is an amazing card. As I say, I think it's a really good ramp target where you just sort of go, I'm in a growth spiral and circuitous route sort of deck, so I'm going to ramp. And bam, here's this on like turn 6. It's a 4/4, draws me 2 cards. I get to go look for more Hydroid Krasis to cast for higher.
So hopefully I cast in 2 turns time, because then they're 6 6/6s that draw you 3 cards.
Exactly, yeah.
It's been amazing for me already so far.
I figured that. But I also see it going in mid-rangey sorts of decks. Again, because that is a cast trigger, it gives you a lot of good game against control decks.
It's a bit of card draw. You're playing it for 6. It's like, this is perfect.
Yeah. Here's a 4/4 that drew me 2 cards for 6 mana. Like we
count
made our own
fine.
Mold Drifter. Like it costs 1 mana more, but is 2/2 bigger and has trample at that point. And Mold Drifter is one of the most powerful cards in formats like Pauper and Cube Draft, and a very well respected Magic card.
And just giving green a good sized flyer. That's also
terrifying.
Nice.
Yeah, that could be real scary. So yeah, I think Hydroid Krasis is one of those cards that I think we're going to be playing with it in a lot of different decks, and I kind of wish I'd seen if I could pick up some copies early cheap, but I don't think they were going cheap anywhere.
I don't think they were.
I think everyone's come to a similar conclusion to us. This is going to be a really good card.
Yeah.
So yeah. Simeon, your number 2.
My number 2 is Rhythm of the Wild. This is 1 red-green for an enchantment, and yet another enchantment that we need to be dealing with. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-creature tokens you control have Riot. We haven't seen Gruul decks do massively well in the opening week.
No, I guess not. Like on Arena, it looks a little bit.
I feel that's because they're not yet built properly for the metagame.
I agree with that. I'll agree with
there
that.
Are so many strong cards, and being able to have a card like this that gives everything you own haste means that puts your opponent in a really bad spot. Do I attack you? I can't, because you could play 3 creatures and they can all have haste.
It does change the math, because obviously against aggressive decks, the plan is you have to kill them, because they will eventually draw the stuff that kills you. So you do have to kill them if you're like a mid-rangey deck. And Rhythm of the Wild changes that maths really badly, especially against creatures that already have Riot, so that they are bigger and hasty.
Yes, or they could be doubly hasty if you really want to rub it in. But I would recommend making them bigger and hasty. So it was this or Domri as the card to put in for that deck. I think this is the more important card for it. Enchantments.
So, do you mind if I weigh in on this one?
Yeah, do.
Because I think Domri will be the main deck card, and I think Rhythm is going to be a side deck card. If there is an effect like this desired, I think Rhythm's going to go in the sideboard, and I think Domri's going to go in the main deck, because Domri gets to draw those cards. I think in long games / mid-range and into control decks, but obviously control decks countering your Domri feels pretty bad, so there's less of that. The Domri draw 1, maybe 2 creatures is going to be extremely important. Where Rhythm of the Wild comes into its own is against those control decks, because if you can get it down on turn 2 with an elf, the chance of them being able to counter it is basically 0, and from that point on, uncountable creatures with haste. you are always getting some level of damage value out of them, unless your opponent manages to find exactly every single turn that they can settle the wreckage and seal aways, you know?
And they won't be running seal aways.
Yeah, okay, so and there are obviously other removal spells that will be started to be played in control decks at instant speed, etc., etc. But that's my sort of position on it.
That's fair. I think the reason why Rhythm is here is because I think in a best of one format, I'd rather have Rhythm.
Okay.
Because
I can see where you're coming from.
It has value against every deck. As you say, Domri is going to get countered.
Domri's going to get countered because it's very
and
scary.
Rhythm can come down quicker, and once it's there, it's not getting... Nothing else is getting countered.
Yeah. And also, Domri obviously isn't as good against control decks, I don't think, because Rhythm allows you to go, okay, I managed to hit Rhythm on turn 3 because they killed my elf, because that will happen. And then on turn 4, you go, here's 2 2-drops. They're now 3 3s that block all your stuff. Go. You know, that sort of thing is definitely real. And yeah, I'll agree that Rhythm of the Wild could totally see more play in best of one formats.
And I'm hoping it will see lots of play in best of threes.
Me too.
As I said,
I would be happy in a world where Rhythm of the Wild is a good card, honestly.
And making the decision of whether you give haste or counters is going to be a thing to learn.
Decision points in Magic. I really... So this set has my... You know, what I think of as my designer brain just going, this is really clever. What they've done here is really good. Like, the number of split cards that give you choices and decisions throughout the course of the game, and Riot being a choice in a lot of different situations and that kind of thing. It's really good. You're not just playing, here's a good creature on curve, here's a good creature on curve, you know. Explore was good for this. Explore gives you decision points a lot of the time and that kind of thing. So it's excellent to see design doing these things that goes, no, Magic is the most interesting when you are making decisions. Let's give our players a lot of decisions to make, and that will also, by, you know, almost accident, although of course it's purely design, will advantage players who understand what is going on far more, because more decisions for you to get right or wrong means more ways for you to outplay an opponent, and I think that's really important. Like the number of times even during pre-release where you said, should I be making this one bigger even though I want to hit you with it, like Creatures with Riot, because there's X, Y, and Z removal spells in the format, and it's like, actually, if you know what spells are in the format and are being played in, say, the red decks or the black decks, you know if you should be making it bigger because it's going to need to get through a blocker or a burn spell, or you go, no, I need to get in damage right now because it's going to die soon.
It's also then, can I do combat mass with the thing I'm going to play next turn? If this thing hitting you now and the other one hitting you next turn, is that enough to kill you?
Yeah.
So planning 2-3 turns ahead is also going to be really important with that card.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree.
It's
a Gruul smash card that makes you really think about how you're smashing.
Yeah, I don't want to think when I'm smashing. Oh. Anyway, what about your number 2, Jack?
My number 2 is a card that I am super hyped about. Simeon knew that I would be putting this on my list because I am absolutely in love with this card. It does all of the things that I want to do in Magic. This is Priest of Forgotten Gods. This is a 1/2 human cleric for 1 and a black that says tap, sacrifice 2 other creatures. That's your cost. 2 other creatures. It cannot sacrifice itself. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. So your opponent generally will be the only one doing this, but you can also make yourself lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add black and draw a card. So drawing a card is good. Opponent sacrificing a creature is really good. Opponent losing 2 life is a way to win the game. And adding black means you occasionally get to do really cool things. This with the Gutter Bones has worked out really nicely for me on Arena, because obviously the black pays for the ability to put it back in your hand. So you only have to pay the 1 black to put it back on the battlefield. especially if you've already attacked with the Gutter Bones. It's a real nice loop. Obviously, you can ramp up to slightly bigger things. Gruesome Menagerie is the one that I've been trying to make work. I think the deck that I've put the card in is wrong for it. I think I'm meant to be a lower to the ground aggro deck as opposed to ramping up into these big things. But there's a lot of really interesting design space going on with the Priest, and I'm super hyped to try and find a good version of, I guess it's sort of an aristocrat style deck, but Priest is both the outlet and the payoff and the enabler because she draws you more cards to sacrifice to her. This Priest is literally the triple threat in Aristocrats.
Yeah, you're surprised when people don't kill her on the spot.
People keep pointing their removal spells at my hero of Precinct 1, and I'm like, that really isn't the card you should be worrying about, especially if my Priest isn't summoning sick and I just sacrifice it in response. I've actually then only sacrificed one creature to counter your removal spell, and drawn an extra card and maybe made enough black mana to do something. Not frequently, obviously, we're a creature-based deck, so doing it at instant speed is normally not going to get you any advantages. But yeah, when people go, oh yeah, I'll point this, this strike or this lava coil at the hero, I'm like, hero's good. He's on my list for a reason. But Priest is the engine. Priest is the heart of this deck. What are you doing leaving me with this card? So yeah, I'm really shocked by a lot of situations where people let the Priest live.
Is Hero a he?
I could be wrong. Hero might be a she.
I think Hero's a she, but I'm not sure.
They. I should go with gender pronouns.
Let's go with they.
Yeah. But yes, the Priest is a kill on sight card as far as I'm concerned. She needs to die before I do.
Yeah.
Especially against certain decks. Obviously against your fairly mid-rangey decks or your creatureless control decks, sacrificing a creature is basically never coming up. Taking 2 damage is meh. And against a lot of those, in mid-range decks, you've got a lot of chaff to throw away. In creatureless control decks, it's never coming up. Taking 2 damage can be meh if you haven't already done enough damage. But, drawing a card if you've got useless creatures lying around, really well worth it.
And when you're playing against something like Drake's, it play out 1 threat a turn.
Oh, that was so beautiful.
And you can just go, okay, I'll sack these 2 things and you sack your Drake, thanks.
Yeah, opponents just kept playing Drakes one at a time into my Priests. And I'm like, I don't think you get this. The funniest one was opponent going, aha, well, here's my Rekindling Phoenix. You can't make me lose that permanently. It's like, your end step, sacrifice a creature. My turn, you sacrifice a creature. It goes away now. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You do actually get 2 activations before I get to get it back. It's like, yep, it's nuts. So yeah, I think Priest of Forgotten Gods is something that we all need to be really aware of, especially with your number 1 card, Simeon.
Yes, my number 1 is the card that was your number 5. So, Judith, the Scourge Diva. 1 black-red for a legendary creature, Human Shaman. Other creatures you control get +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith, the Scourge Diva deals 1 damage to any target. So if you have Judith and the Priest on the field, you can sack with the Priest, and then Judith will do her damage to whatever smaller creatures your opponent has, forcing them to sack their big thing.
It's so good. It's so lovely when it comes off like that. It's like, I'm going to knock out your Branchwalker and your Llanowar Elf. You can sacrifice the Carnage Tyrant.
Yeah. She is bonkers.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, her 2 modes work really nicely in a lot of different situations. In the deck that I was playing, it was like, well, we're fairly token heavy because we like to make things to sacrifice, but they all still get +1/+0 and turn sideways for value.
Yeah.
Like damage.
It allows you to go, okay, I'll kill you on turn 5 with just damage instead of doing this comboing off thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so no, I think you're absolutely right. I think Judith is pretty incredible, and great to see in Standard. Since
seeing you and other people playing with it, there was no way she couldn't be on my list, and then she kept creeping up and up and up, and eventually she went, yeah, I am the big dog.
Yeah. Judith might actually be number 1 in this set. I think a lot of my cards made it in over her because occasionally she looks a little bit mopey. Like, when there's nothing going on around her, she looks super mopey, but actually a lot of my top 5, the same can be said of them. If there are no multicolored spells, Hero of Precinct 1 does nothing. It's a 2/2. if there's nothing else to sacrifice, Priest of Forgotten Gods is a 1/2. Hydroid Krasis needs a certain amount of mana to be reasonable. And my number 1 also doesn't work unless you've got other stuff to do with it.
Yeah, so it doesn't do anything on its own.
Doesn't do anything on its own. So yeah, there's definitely that aspect of a lot of these cards are synergy pieces. They are pieces to a puzzle.
You end up look back through both of our top 10s, and there isn't really anything that goes, this is just wins games as itself sat there.
There's no, yeah,
Hydroid Krasis does. It will come out, it comes out as a
But
huge
you still
thing.
need to cast it for enough mana for it to matter.
I mean, so once you're at that late in the game, 8, 9, 10 mana, a Hydroid Krasis, nothing else can win you the game.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, obviously any creature and nothing else can win you the game. But a 2/2 coming down at that point is like, yeah, on its own, not great.
No, totally agree.
Yeah, both players 8 mana, empty battlefield. Of our cards, I think you want the Hydroid Krasis.
You want the Hydroid Krasis, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, lots of the things in here, they're great cards, but they need to work with other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your list has a lot more of them, I think. Ravager Worm, Theatre of Horrors, Warrant Warden are better, like, single card, this is just a decent card kind of things. While they are obviously way better when there are specific things going on around them. But yes, a lot of my list is, no, you need to be doing pretty specific things to make these good. Apart from maybe Mortify, which is just, a removal spell.
I guess in part that's because you've been playing this deck with the Priest and the Hero and Judith in it.
Yeah.
And you've seen how strong they are.
Yeah.
See, I don't have a lot else to say about Judith herself, except play her. She is good.
She's very good. Good in sealed, as I found out, as someone crushed me with her as well.
So yes. Better go to your number 1.
My number one actively terrifies me. This card scares the living bejesus out of me. I am really worried for the state of the format going forward, but Wilderness Reclamation could cause us to go back to Nexus and Fog decks being actively powerful, and there is a problem with that. Obviously, they haven't been powerful beyond the first week they came out last season, but at the same time, there's definitely something there. Like when you don't find a way to interact with them, you fall down really hard. Like and it feels bad. That's the problem that I have with it. It feels bad when you lose to a Nexus of Fate deck because you've sat there for 20 minutes while your opponent keeps going off. Because
you should have conceded a lot earlier.
Yes, I fully understand that, Simeon, and I may be exaggerating with the 20 minutes, but it's not a deterministic kill, and if you've got lethal on the board, and all you need is one more turn, and all your opponent's doing is just going, Nexus, activate something, and hope I find Nexus, and you only need them to miss once, then you keep playing. Whereas we all realistically know the chances, when decks like this start going off, the chances of them not finding either a Nexus or a Fog to prevent whatever's going on, it's not very likely that you're actually going to win.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about the play patterns that this will create with Nexus of Fate. I tell you what, though, I am not scared about the play patterns it creates if the Nexus of Fate isn't in the deck. If this is a expansion, explosion, ramp deck, that's cool. That's actually fine with me because that gets the game over in a reasonable pace. There's a level of interactivity that's going on there, that kind of thing. So, no, if this becomes a Nexus of Fate enabler, which I'm really worried it will do, I am scared. If this becomes just a part of a nice, cool, instant speed ramp deck, that's interesting to me. And while I will continue packing things like Mortify and Duress and Negate to deal with this stupid free magic card, because this is a free enchantment on turn 4. Just comes down and untaps all your land in the end step, and as long as you've built your deck with some number of instants in there, you didn't play anything on turn 4, except next turn you're on 10 mana.
Again, assuming you have the instants.
And that's the point, right? And again, that's the point. It's finding the shell that really works with this. Todd Anderson has, I believe, spent a massive amount of time attempting to break this card and has sort of moved away from the Nexus of Fate stuff for the moment. But I am very worried that that's just because they already know how good that is and they want to test the other stuff that you could be doing with it. And as soon as a tournament pops up, it's just like, Wilderness Reclamation, Nexus of Fate, let's do it.
I don't think I would play it at a paper tournament.
I don't think I'd play it on an online tournament. I think I'd play it in a paper tournament.
I think the only place you play it is Arena.
I can see you getting clocked more than you'd like on Arena.
You don't, because you keep starting new turns.
You start new turns. It's not the same clock, is it?
Yeah, you start a new clock. Whereas on Magic Online or in paper, you're using up the clock. And on paper, you'll just get too many draws. It is not going to be a big paper deck.
It didn't get too many draws last time, as long as you were in the hands of a competent opponent playing it.
It still didn't win anything.
No, this is true. It did well at a couple of tournaments, and then basically everyone went and oversideboarded for it at Brussels, and then the next week it was just another deck.
Yeah, and it will be a deck. Don't get me wrong, it will be a deck, but I wouldn't take it to a paper tournament ever because of the time it takes to play it out.
Fair enough.
And you are far more likely to get draws.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't play it on Magic Online because you're using your clock all the time, so your opponent can just go, yeah, fine. If you can't kill me, you'll use your clock.
Yeah.
F6.
So yeah, I'm not all doom and gloom. Don't take this as me being like, oh, he thinks it's the format's going to be awful again. It's like, no, I really don't think that there is a ton of super interesting stuff going on here. I'm just really worried that Nexus of Fate comes back into the format and people go, oh yeah, that's the deck a ton of us should be playing. At least, even if it's even just for a weekend, that weekend's Magic is going to be abysmal.
I also think a lot of people will not pick up that deck. It's the sort of deck that there are types of Magic player who don't want to play it.
I mean, yeah, I fall into that category. I don't particularly want to play it.
I fall into that category. I would like Wilderness Reclamation in a Simic deck where I can use the untap my lands and then put counters on things with Adapt.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd actually be sweet.
Pump various creatures. I know, like Fallen Lieutenant, for instance.
Ooze. The Ooze Lord.
Yeah, or make lots of oozes.
Yeah. That'd be cool. That'd be real cool, actually. Like I say, I'm totally in for a Teamer ramp deck that's like using this so that it can expansion explosion, like a Teamer control-ish style deck. Wilderness Reclamation, Growth Spiral, Chemist's Insight, and then expansion explosion to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, that would actually be kind of cool to me to play against that. And again, it's because it's doing something interesting. It's cheating on mana, which is one of those things that cheating on mana and cheating on cards are two of the biggest ways of like breaking, quote unquote, breaking Magic. And Wilderness Reclamation gets to break Magic in a relatively not completely busted way most of the time. It's as soon as you're putting it in a situation where your opponents don't get to play Magic, then it's not fun. As when you go back and you play it in like a sort of semi-normal way, which is, well, I get to play this threat on my main phase and then untap and hold up counter Magic. That's really weird and interesting to me, and could lead to a ton of interesting decision points. So yeah, I'm not down on Wilderness Reclamation being in the format. I just
I think we're down
printed and instant speed time walk.
Yeah, we're down on Nexus of Fate being in the format. Which is sort of where we've been since it came out.
Yeah, kinda.
But it hasn't met the format yet. We had one of the best standards we've ever had.
Yep.
And it was there in that format. So let's hope it stays the same.
No, totally agree.
Okay.
I absolutely agree.
So that is our top 10s, or that they are our top 10s.
They are our top 10s.
For Ravnica Allegiance. Whereabouts can we play some standards, Jack, over the coming weeks?
So, obviously, we've got no big tournaments, no PPTQs, no PTQs, nothing like that coming out of WotC to tell us that that's going on. We've got a few winner boxes coming up though. So if you're looking for your competitive fix, we've got a few standard winner boxes that are coming up. We've got one this weekend on the 27th, which is, I believe, Sunday. I could be wrong. Sunday?
Yes,
yep, Sunday the 27th.
Yep.
At Harlequins Preston. The weekend after, we then have two winner boxes that we know about. Again, tell us if people are holding them, because we would love to hear about it. We've got one on Saturday the 2nd, that is at Axia Now, again, winner box. And then Fanboy 3 is on Sunday the 3rd of February for their winner box. So do consider going to those over the next couple of weekends. And then obviously, Simeon, do you want to tell us about the weekend after?
Yeah, so the weekend of the 9th, 10th February is the Mega Magic weekend at Stansted Airport, being run by Axion Now, featuring the last ever RPTQ, which will qualify for, it's not called Magic Fest London, it's not qualifying for that. Mythic Championship London.
There we go.
It will have Mega Modern as well. They're both on the Sunday, and on the Saturday, the day before, there'll be a team trio, Standard, Modern and Legacy, and the final last chance qualifier in Standard, as well as obviously UMA, Ravnica Allegiance drafts, rebound side events, various other things going on in the weekend. So do book yourselves in for that.
And when he says book, he does mean book. For anyone who is going to the RPTQ, you still need to book.
Yeah.
Your space is not necessarily guaranteed.
No, because obviously you can take up your RPTQ qualification at various RPTQs.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't guarantee you entry into this one event. Though we do also want to make sure we get 94 players in it so that we can send all 8.
That would be amazing.
Of the top
like I
8
said
in.
last week, that would be a really great showing from the UK scene to be like, no, we're sending 8 people to our own Mythic Championship. That would be really cool. And I think with that, it's just time to do the sign-off. Simeon, what would you be playing this weekend? What's been catching your eye?
So I've been trying Simic counters, Simic oozes, and they're quite fun. I don't think they're tuned enough for a proper standard deck yet. I guess if I was going to a big event, I would have to take the deck you've been playing, the Mardu Sacrifice
Mardu
stuff.
Aristocrats.
Yeah, Mardu Aristocrats deck. I'm not sure I'm very good at playing it.
Ha! Neither am I.
No, I think I'm much worse than you at playing it. I could also very much be persuaded to take the Rakdos Burn.
Yeah, I can see that. I do believe that things like Light Up the Stage and Theatre of Horrors are cards that, certainly in the early format, are going to be really important to consider, because being an aggressive deck is normally a good thing.
Yeah,
in the early stages of format, because you want to be a proactive deck, and oftentimes the best proactive decks that are easiest to tune with a least text testing are the ones that are just hyper aggro.
So they'd be my options if I was going to something big this weekend. What about you?
So I've been enjoying my time with Mardu Aristocrats deck. It's a really odd deck. I think you pointed out on stream a couple of days ago, Simeon. It's because I'm winning with a bunch of dorky creatures.
Yeah.
I feel really weird about winning. I keep just sort of going, I don't understand how I win, and at the same time I am clearly crushing my opponents. Don't get it. You know, the fact that we keep going like 5-1 on Arena. We've had 2 5-1s, a 3-2, and a 2-2 out of our like fully played out leagues. And I did also join one and instantly quit it because I realised I hadn't changed the deck list properly. We're above rate on wins with the deck, so I'm not saying I wouldn't take it, but I could also see me taking basically Golgari mid-range. Like, if I was really interested in doing well this weekend, I would be taking Golgari mid-range, sort of messing with the mana base a little bit and getting some blue sources in there.
You'd be turning it into Sultai mid-range.
I'd be turning it into Sultai mid-range, putting some Hydroid Krasis in the main and some counter spells in the sideboard. And, I mean, Simeon, you'll attest to this. I love mid-range decks with counter spells.
You do.
It's kind of what I have enjoyed doing for a very long time now, the last like 2-ish years. If I can play a mid-range version of a deck with counter spells, I'm a happy man. And so I can definitely see doing that. The reason that we didn't want to do it last season, despite the fact that we had most of the Shocklands in the format, or half of the Shocklands in the format, was because the blue-green shocks were not in the format, and the Golgari deck is heavily more green than it is black. So you want to make sure that you've got the correct number of sources, and it's just easier when you've got the blue-green shocks in there as well.
Sultai mid-range, I could see.
I'm definitely considering putting it together on Arena and playing it on stream tomorrow night. That's definitely something that I'm interested in doing.
I will try and be on and watching you.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Apologies to listeners, of course. Tomorrow night for you is not what we mean.
No, exactly. Although I'll probably be on Friday night or Thursday night testing with either it or a similar looking mid-rangey deck. We might have gone back to Mardu Aristocrats, but yeah, I want to see what the mid-range in the format looks like.
Fair.
That's just where I am at the moment. Right then, if you would like to look at any of the deck lists that we have posted over our time, please do head over to standardintelligence.uk. If you'd like to talk to either myself or Simeon about Standard, about our top 10s, how wrong we are to have missed a card, because we'll probably agree with you, because there are a ton of cards in here that we wanted to put on. Do contact us. Twitter is probably the easiest way. Simeon, you are?
I am at SimeonBMTG.
And I am at JackPattern42. If you'd like to talk to us about anything longer form, please do email at standardpattern@gmail.com. We have a YouTube channel now, and this episode, like all of our others, will be going up there. Our last week's episode, I don't know if you've seen our last week's episode on YouTube, Simeon.
I have not watched it, I'm afraid.
I did some fun animations with Legion Warboss. It was very amusing to me. That may have been because I was doing those animations at something like 2 a.m, but I found it quite amusing to do. I do also, as we mentioned previously, stream. Do head over to jackpattern_MTG and you'll see a bunch of new cards and me playing with some interesting new decks. The first one that I played was a Mardu Aristocrats, and actually those videos are also up on YouTube if you want to go and see those leagues. But as I say, I'm going to be trying to branch out and build some more mid-rangey stuff over the next couple of days, so we'll see how that goes. I'd also like to give another big shout out and a thank you to our patrons over on our Patreon. If you are interested in supporting the show and would like to be in for the next draw, for the February draw, please do head over to patreon.com/SIcast. And thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.